Hey, this is Sean, Gulf Coast and Beyond. I'm at the Douglas Clark House, Gallatin, Tennessee, and I'm going to get ready to take a tour. They're going to show me around and give me a tour of how this place, this part of history and part of the war. And so, tag along. Let's check it out.
So, all right,
thank you, man. What room is this here? This is the.
Well, this is actually several rooms.
Yeah.
But yeah, my name's Andrew. I'll be your historian.
Thank you. Nice to meet you, man. Appreciate it.
And where'd you say you're from?
Pensacola, Florida.
Pensacola, Florida.
Yeah.
Okay.
Thank you, man.
Well, how'd you find out about us?
I've been to Gallatin before. A couple months ago, I was at the we did a tour of the Rosemont, and with the Ray Chasers, we did some at the Trousdale, did a hunt there. So, and this isn't really a ghost hunting thing. I'm just a big, huge history nut, and I just wanted to see, and this is right off the beaten path. And I said I got to get over here, So.
Did you meet Kendall? She actually used to be at Rosemont. I don't know if you know her.
No, Eli's the only one at the Rosemont. Okay. So he's a good guy.
Well, welcome.
Thank you.
So this house sits on property that was originally owned by a guy named Elmore Douglass. He owned 640 acres, which is 1 square mile. Station Camp Creek over here, that's the eastern boundary of the property. Property was arranged in kind of a rough rectangle running north and south.
Oh man, beautiful thing, stream back there. Wow.
Yeah. Where the house sits, it was on the southern half, towards halfway, so a little bit below halfway. And property was going on both sides of what is now Long Hollow Pike.
That's beautiful.
Elmore, he applies for the land in 1784. It is granted in 1786. That's the year this house was built. Later that same year, Elmore Douglass has a hand in forming Sumner County out of portions of what was Davidson County, where Nashville is.
Got it.
And at this time, this is the countryside, not infrastructure or government buildings. So there was no courthouse. And so for a long time, they would use people's homes as the courthouse. This was the courthouse of Sumner County from 1788 to 1790.
So just to get that instant justice in, huh?
Yeah. And also, perspective on this time, Tennessee is not a state yet. Did not become a state until 1796. So this is all territory of North Carolina.
What do they call that? A union or when it's not a state? It's just like what's the word for that? Not property, but it's there's a name for it. It's kind of generic. It's just a land or something. I can't think of the name of it.
Territory?
Right. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, that's it.
Yeah. North Carolina was just sort of its own entity at that time. They weren't really connected to anything. Yeah, so when this first became a courthouse, it was not Tennessee and it was not the United States. It was also not the United States because North Carolina did not ratify the Constitution until November of '89.
Wow.
The next year. So it was not Tennessee, it was not the United States, but it was North Carolina. I do actually have this map here. It's the same one that's up there.
Yeah.
And it says Tennessee. Ignore that. It's what became Tennessee. This entire section here was originally Davidson County, and then it got cut in half, and that became Sumner. But that's still huge. That's like a third of
it's like almost the whole state. Yeah. No kidding.
There's parts of about a dozen modern counties in that space.
Yeah.
But Sumner, Davidson, and there's nothing called Tennessee County anymore. But those three combined to make what was then known as the Mero District, M-E-R-O, which was a judicial district. The only reason I bring that up is because in 1789, they appoint a new district attorney who was a 21-year-old man named Andrew Jackson. So Andrew Jackson actually practiced law in this room.
That's awesome.
And like I said, he was 21, was not quite the same guy that you see on the $20 bill, did not have the white hair yet.
Yeah.
He was a redhead, if you can believe it, which might explain a thing or two.
I would have lost a bet on that one for sure.
But Elmore, he's eventually going to sell this property, and it's going to change hands a couple times.
Yeah.
It's going to go to a man named Dawson, then a man named Rawlings. It's eventually going to wind up with Elmore Douglass's brother, Reuben Douglass. Now, Reuben never lived in this home, as far as we know.
Yeah.
This road right here is Long Hollow Pike. The next road, I don't know if you can see kind of between the leaves over there, the road that's going that way.
Yeah.
That is Upper Station Camp. If you go up that road a short distance, you'll come to a point where Liberty Lane goes off to the right.
Yeah.
Opposite side of the road, there's a home that's still standing. That is the home that Reuben Douglass lived in when he owned this property.
Oh, I'll go take a shot of that real quick.
And slave workers working on his property. One of his children is named Emma. We'll pick up with her a little bit later on.
Okay, and all this right here, is this all how it was, or this is all original here? I mean, it looks like, I know all this right here probably is the fireplace and all that. Is this all
Yeah.
kind of?
So yeah, a few things in this room. First of all, this wall is not original.
Okay.
So the original space in the home went from that wall to the next wall on the other side of this one, and
Okay.
that was the whole home at the time. These two spaces combined.
Okay.
The two doors here, they do not function. If you go outside, it's just a wall there. But these are where the original doors were.
Okay.
That was the front. This was the back. You can see these would be kind of centered between the two walls.
Yep. I see.
This is the original fireplace from 1786.
Wow.
The mantle is not that old. It's only 1840s, so it's brand new, relatively speaking.
Yeah, relatively. Awesome.
Like I said, this wall wasn't here. This was added by a 20th century family so they could put a bathroom in the corner. And the second floor is original, but the staircase is not. Originally, it was a ladder in this space.
Wow, look how steep that goes.
Yeah, a testament to it used to being a ladder because they had to,
Yeah,
probably had to cut a little bit of a larger space.
Oh, I'm sure.
And we don't have any direct documentation describing exactly what went on upstairs, but most typically it's going to be either storage or kids, which some people tell me is the same thing.
Yeah.
And this right here is what you call a dry sink. Same basic function as a modern sink, you just don't have the plumbing or the drain. Going outside, getting buckets of water, bringing it inside.
Wow.
But washing dishes, wetting your hands, it's in that space right there. And this is our sort of task indication that this was a courthouse.
Wow.
Any
Yeah,
questions
nice.
here?
No, I'm just really, like I said, I love history, man. Really glad to be here. Thanks for showing me this.
Yeah, this is by far the quickest room.
Yeah, let's do it.
We can head to the next room.
Okay.
Not much going on in here, but I have plenty to say.
Sure.
So, mentioned that Reuben had a daughter named Emma. In 1831, Emma gets married to a man named William S.F. Clark. And this is still Reuben's property, but he allows him to move into this home, which at that point ended right here.
Wow.
This was the outside of the home at the time. But Emma and William, they're the ones who expand from this wall to not this wall, but the next one there, the fireplace.
Oh, okay.
Adding this whole section, first and second floor. Don't know exactly what year that took place. Our best guess is sometime in the mid-1840s. And at that time, these two walls were not here. This was an open breezeway, what they call a dog trot.
Oh, okay.
So
Yeah, I
think
see
of it as
that.
kind of like a porch with buildings on two sides instead of just one.
Not to mention, you probably get a nice breeze through here in the
Oh yeah,
in the
breeze would
spring.
have been amazing.
Yeah, I can imagine.
Especially with this like little valley over here.
Yeah, and you got
come up the hill.
and the stream out there too. I imagine you got some cool air.
And so this is also the original staircase. So the staircase would have been outside, covered but outside.
Yeah.
But Emma got married in 1831. The next year, 1832, is the year that Reuben died. And I mentioned that he had 33 enslaved workers.
Yeah.
They get divided among his children. Emmett is going to inherit 4 of them. Their names are Minerva, Marcellus, Cornelia, and Mary.
Wow.
And from that generation, we get a later generation that includes a man named Winchester Clark, who was the son of Minerva, one of the sons actually.
Okay.
And Winchester was born into slavery on this property. During the time of the Civil War, he would have been in his early 20s. He actually leaves this property and enlists with the 13th United States Colored Troops. A large portion of that unit was originally formed in the town square over here in Gallatin.
Okay.
But he was actually not among that number. We know that Winchester enlisted in Nashville in September 1863. If you go back the year before, February 1862 is when Nashville surrendered to the Union. By the end of that year, most of Sumner County is also under federal occupation. So Winchester probably didn't have to run very far to self-emancipate himself. There's probably Union patrols
all
on
over
every side of this property.
Yep.
Also, between here and Nashville, we know that there was a contraband camp in Hendersonville. Are you familiar with that term?
No.
So what it is effectively is a safe area for enslaved people who are fleeing from the Confederacy to be safe behind Union lines. The reason it's called contraband camp is because the U.S. Department of War is sort of exploiting a loophole where they can consider captured, free, enslaved people as contraband of war. So that's where that term kind of comes from. So it has the positive effect that these former enslaved people get their freedom, but on the Union And the side of the Union Army, they're doing this because they're hoping that taking workforce away from the Confederacy is going to help shorten the war. That's their motive.
Kind of theory,
yeah.
Yeah.
And we don't know for sure that Winchester ever actually went to that contraband camp.
Don't know.
But it just sort of makes sense that he would go from here to Hendersonville, then to Nashville where he enlisted, and then he winds up in Murfreesboro where he was mustered.
Oh, okay.
He became a soldier, not a condiment.
Yeah, like I said, I was in the Trousdale and the Rosemont, man, and it's the same thing. This whole town was like that, man. It was crazy.
But Winchester, he served with that unit all the way up to the Battle of Nashville. Are you familiar with that battle?
Yes.
So it doesn't get talked about very much, and that's why I talk about it. So just sort of a quick overview of the battle.
Yeah.
This is December 15th and December 16th of 1864.
Right.
Let me catch the light.
Sure.
So Union commanded by General George Thomas, Confederates by General John Bell Hood. Prior to the Battle of Nashville was the Battle of Franklin, which is south in Franklin, Tennessee.
Right.
That battle was John Bell Hood desperately trying to track down the troops under John Schofield, who had been south and was trying to get to Nashville to be reinforced by Thomas. You can see from his presence here that he did get away, barring the bloody Battle of Franklin.
Okay.
But there's about 2.5 weeks between Franklin and Nashville. During that time, Hood is doing everything he can to make this position as strong as he can. He's digging trenches and making earthworks. And while he's doing that, George Thomas is getting telegraphs almost every day from Washington, D.C. saying, you have to attack, you have to attack. Every day that you don't, Hood is making his position stronger.
Yeah.
And some geography here. That gray line, that is 440 today.
Oh, wow.
So 440 is built kind of in the shadow of this section of the Confederate line.
That's amazing.
Yeah. Until you get to Hillsborough Pike, which is still there. See this space between the creek and the pike right here?
Yeah.
That is where Green Hills Mall is today. To give you an idea where this is.
Wow. Yeah, I would have never, I've heard of it, but I would never know that kind of detail like that. That's awesome. Thank you, Andrew.
But Thomas, he's eventually going to launch this massive preemptive assault, and it's pretty effective. Hood has to fall back to a new position flanked on Shies Hill and Overton Hill, which you can see here. This is where Winchester Clark comes into play. Cast a shadow again.
That's all right. It's going to do that.
Okay.
It'll show though on the...
So Winchester, his commanding general is General Steedman, who is not marked but would be right there. This section of the battle is blown up here so you can see some more detail.
Yeah.
Steedman actually had 2 entire brigades of African-American troops. So you can see here there's the 13th United States Colored Troops, that's Winchester's unit. Also the 100th USCT, the 12th, the 18th. Of all of those African-American units, the 13th was the only one that made it all the way up to the earthworks before being repulsed. They actually mounted the top of the parapet before they were pushed back. Indeed, the reason they were pushed back is they were the only ones that made it and they had no support, so they had to fall back.
Yeah.
And they're going to pay a high cost for their efforts.
Oh, yeah.
Casualties in the 13th was right at 40% killed, captured, and wounded. There's actually a quote by the Confederate officer Holtzclaw, who can see me right there opposite from where the 13th made contact. He said the black troops are very brave, but they came only to die. And this is the strongest section on this Confederate line. It never broke as a direct result of combat. And if you're looking at the map, it's not terribly hard to figure out why. That road right there, that's the Confederate supply line. It's also their escape route if they need it. So obviously they're going to stack that side as much as they can to protect that road. And the Union knew that. They knew whoever they sent on this side was going to get chewed up and spit out. And just sort of the unfortunate reality of the time is who's in the least position to say no? It's the black. Had 10 kids. If you can imagine in this space 10 kids.
Oh my gosh.
What I can imagine is mom and dad saying go play outside.
Yeah.
But it's going to be 5 boys and 5 girls. They managed to split it right down the middle. And did you see the sign out here next to the parking lot?
I came in from the up there, but
yeah,
I'll look at it though.
It's down there at the end of the sidewalk, basically describing how 4 of Emma's sons are going to fight for the Confederacy, and 3 of them are going to die during the course of the war.
Oh.
So these are the sons right here.
Okay.
Oldest, youngest is Captain Reuben Douglas Clark, named for his grandfather. Second son is Charles Clark. The third son, who we do not have a picture of, he would be in the middle here. His name was William Jr. He was, well, we don't have a lot of information about him. What we do know is that he evidently suffered from some sort of mental disability. In the 1850 census, he was listed as a student. He was 11 years old. He was being educated just like all of his other siblings, including, in fact, his sisters. Then 10 years later, in the 1860 census, he was 21 years old, and for the first time, he was recorded as being, quote, idiotic, is the way it was written in the census.
You can see the resemblance.
Yeah. So my conclusion about William Jr. tends to be that there may have been some sort of accident between 11 and 21 that left him somehow disabled.
Okay.
But next is David Fulton Clark, and then the youngest is Edward Green Clark, or Ned, as they call him. So starting at the bottom and going back up, you understand what I mean if I say Eastern and Western Theater?
As opposed to the Tennessee? You mean they're talking about the battle?
It just sort of refers to where the battles take place during the Civil War.
Okay.
So Eastern Theater, that's battles in Virginia, West Virginia, Maryland, Gettysburg, the one that's in Pennsylvania. That's the Eastern Theater. And Western is on this side of the Appalachian Mountains. So Tennessee, Kentucky, Alabama, Mississippi, so on. So Ned, he is fighting in the Eastern Theater, primarily in Virginia. He was fighting with the 7th Tennessee Regiment. That unit was formed of men from Sumner County, Wilson County to the south, Smith County to the east, and DeKalb County, which is over there somewhere. And we don't have a ton of indications about what all these soldiers did during the Civil War, but one that we do have is that supposedly Ned never missed a battle, which he would have been involved with several. Law of averages, you're going to get sick or wounded and miss at least a battle, and we know that Ned was wounded twice and still never missed. He was wounded at the Battle of Seven Pines. I'm guessing you've never been to, or maybe you have, to the town square in Lebanon. There's a statue of a Confederate general there named Robert H. Hatton, who in this case is at least from Lebanon. Why there was ever a statue of Robert E. Lee in New Orleans when he was never there during the war.
Good point.
But Hatton was Ned's commanding general.
Okay.
At the Battle of Seven Pines, Ned was wounded, Hatton was killed at the same battle. Later at the Battle of Mechanicsville, Ned actually has his arm broken, he goes back, gets it wrapped up, and immediately goes back to where the fighting was taking place. I'm used to getting some strange looks when I say that. I usually double down with the fact that over here at the Battle of Franklin, there was a Confederate soldier who, quote, marched into battle on crutches, if you can imagine.
No, I believe it, man.
But this is all leading up until the Battle of Second Manassas, which is also in Virginia. The day before that battle began, according to the records, there was a small skirmish that yielded 4 Confederate deaths. And according to his service record, he died near Manassas Junction, where it was previously indicated in the record that he died near Manassas Junction on August 27th, where the battle started on the 28th. So putting 2 and 2 together, he must have been one of those 4 Confederate deaths. The reason it's confusing is because there's no mention of his unit participating in the action there. So how do I reconcile this? I wonder if there wasn't just some guy who was going through the camp saying, hey, we're getting some guys together, we're going to go to the junction, who wants to come with? And he said yes. That's my best guess.
Yeah.
A separate record suggests that he was shot through the body and died instantly. He was the youngest of the brothers, and he was the first to die. He was 18 at the time.
Oh, man, young.
But next to David Fulton Clark, he's in the Western Theater, and supposedly, at the time the Civil War started, he was a teacher in Mississippi and initially joined a Mississippi unit. That's the story that gets kind of passed around the family. I have had a hard time actually verifying that. What I do know for sure is that he enlisted with the 30th Tennessee on October 22nd, 1861. Other than battles, that is the only date I use in my tour, but it's easy to remember because that's my birthday. Not the same year, obviously.
Yeah.
You look okay for 1861. So you're going to have to hang with me here because Charles is by far the most confusing. He was in no less than 4, maybe 5 different units throughout the war. So hang with me. So at first, Charles was in the 1st Battalion Tennessee Cavalry. They participated at the Battle of Mill Springs in southeast Kentucky. Have you ever heard of that battle?
No.
Would not expect you to. Relatively small battle happened very early in the war, 1861 early. But it got a lot of media attention at the time because it was the first battle in which a general was killed. The guy was named Felix Zollicoffer. He had been a congressman from Tennessee prior to the war, so that filled up the newspapers. These people obviously had no idea how bad this war was going to get with later battles like Shiloh and Gettysburg.
Oh my gosh.
But Charles's unit after that battle seems to go in a few different directions. I think they just kind of got dispersed. He winds up with a new unit, the 9th Tennessee Cavalry, which was serving under a commander named John Hunt Morgan, which is a name that some people have heard depending on who you are or where you're from. John Hunt Morgan, most famous for Morgan's Raid, which went all the way up into Kentucky, Indiana, and Ohio. What you need to know about that raid is that even though Morgan went, he got captured, he escaped. When he got back, no one trusted him anymore because he took that raid against orders. So when he gets back, High Command is not giving him good assignments. The soldiers being given to him are misfits and ne'er-do-wells and Charles. Charles missed the raid, but he re-enlisted with Morgan after he got back. But because the rest of these soldiers are a bunch of hoodlums, and because Morgan himself has a fair amount of hubris, they get whipped at their next major battle. Charles has to transfer again, this time to the 18th Tennessee Cavalry, which is one of the regiments serving under Tyree Harris Bell. So moving forward from there, Reuben and Charles were serving under the same commander.
Oh, okay.
Okay. Back to this home in Tuscumbia. Reuben and Charles are there together. They know that Reuben is about to die. According to Bell, nearly every member of his brigade dismounted and went to see Reuben before he died, and almost none of them left with dry eyes. It gives you some indication of how well regarded Reuben was within the unit.
Wow.
A second, not mutually exclusive interpretation is it was probably pretty upsetting, even for these soldiers who had suffered a lot during the war, still probably very jarring for them to see one brother dying in another brother's arms. And if you look at Reuben and Charles's birthdays, you can see that they're only about a year apart.
Yeah.
You'd think they'd be particularly close even for brothers.
Yeah. And then, in modern day Navy, they normally don't let everybody serve in the same, for that reason. So.
Hashtag saving Private Ryan.
Yeah, there you go. Yeah.
But that's the sons, now to the daughters. And yeah, you'd think because Charles is the one who survived, he'd be the most sorted out. No, he's by far the most confusing.
And he had the beard.
Yeah. But also in 1864, Emma's second oldest daughter, Melissa, is going to die, possibly from complications of childbirth.
Oh.
So, quick recap. During the course of the Civil War, Emma has lost 3 sons to battle, 1 daughter possibly to childbirth, and one of her other sons is disabled. Emma has to care for William Jr. until her death in 1881. It's actually in her will that one of her other children has to care for William after she dies. And something I have not mentioned up until this point is that before any of this even happened, Emma was already a widow. William Sr. died in 1847 at the age of 41, not very old. So Emma was a widow years before the Civil War even started, and now she's down 4 children, or 40% of her children.
Yep.
Put yourself in her position, and you have to carry on because you have no choice.
God, that's gotta be brutal, man.
And yeah, we have no idea why William Sr. died so young.
Yeah.
We do know that after he died, they took an inventory of the property because he did not have a will. You'd think even a slightly prolonged illness, he'd have time to write something. So it must have been something very sudden, an accident, a heart attack. Maybe Emma killed him. I don't know.
Yeah, back then, who knows, man? I mean.
But these are the 4 daughters who survived after the Civil War. This is Elizabeth Clark Harris. She married Benjamin Butler Harris, who is kind of a prominent guy. He was like an explorer. He wrote a book about his experiences called The Gila Trail, which you can still find. It was on Amazon, I saw. Kind of crazy. But they moved from Sumner County to Missouri, and then from Missouri to California, and he may or may not have had a hand in founding San Bernardino, California. Regardless, it sounds like they did pretty well for themselves.
Yeah.
She's pictured here with their daughter, Catherine. But this photograph, which is obviously years and years after the Civil War, the daughters are old ladies by this point. This is Ellen, Sophia, and Jane. Jane is the one who is seated. She is the oldest child of Emma. Ellen and Sophia are standing. They are the two youngest children of Emma. Jane, she had been married to a man named William Bone. They had, I think, 9 kids together. But her husband died in 1885. I think it's possible she actually moved back here at some point prior to her death. And by the time this picture was taken, I think only 5 of her children were still alive.
Okay.
On the left, that is Ellen. Her name is actually Eleanor, but she went by Ellen. She married Dr. Alfred Brown. They had 0 kids together, but if they had, they would have been double cousins with Charles's kids.
Right.
Because Alfred Brown's sister, Martha Brown, married Charles. They had 5 kids together. All of them lived to adulthood. But one of their sons, Charles Brown Clark, drowned in that creek when he was 22 years old. You look at that creek now, it's so shallow.
I'm sorry.
Yeah,
that's what I'm saying. Maybe back then it was all the way up to, who knows.
Well, what you need to know is that they did not build Old Hickory Dam until 1951, I think.
Yeah.
So all that water that's now in the lake would have been backed up into these creeks. So it would have been a lot deeper.
A lot higher, yeah, I imagine. Yeah.
But next, or last actually, is Sophia Clark Doris. She married Henry Clay Doris. They had 11 children together, and get this, 0 grandchildren. I don't even know how that happens.
I don't either. That's wow.
I know that if it happened to my grandmother, she would be furious. She's told me as much. But I really have no explanation for that, how that happens. I do know that 1 or 2 of Sophia's sons were traveling salesmen, so maybe they do have kids, we just don't know about it.
Could be.
But this photograph was actually taken outside this window.
Oh, wow, okay.
So the window kind of behind Sophia's head is that one, and the one that she is standing next to is this window right here behind me.
Oh, how cool. So they're right here next to however high the water was.
Yeah.
Okay.
And I mean, these are not the original stairs out here, but you could see this is where they would have been. I'm actually going to step out of the way so you can look closer.
Oh, I see. Oh, I see what you're saying. Yeah.
Also down below, that is the Bible of Reuben Douglass, so Emma's father. It was printed in 1824.
Wow.
Up above on the left, that photograph is one of Sophia's daughters, also Sophia Doris.
Yeah.
That photograph was taken on this side of the house.
Well, that's a beautiful picture too. As old as it is.
And
wow. Yeah, this place is beautiful, man. Yeah, the whole place is just wow.
And everything in this box and a lot of items in this cabinet are actually items that were found here on the property. So that's a heel plate from a boot. That's a pocket knife that was found under where those stairs are now. These 2 were both found by me. They appear to form the hinge of an old barn door. And we know that there was a barn on this property about where that swimming pool is up until 2007. And that was also found by me. It looks like it could be the hub of a carriage wheel.
Sure, yeah.
That is a Civil War bullet. Either from a revolver or a carbine. Carbines typically used by cavalrymen, and we have one of those who survived the war. Maybe that belonged to Charles.
God, almost a complete set right there, almost.
And this right here is what we call a snaffle bit. A snaffle bit holds the straps together of a horse bridle. So there'd be a snaffle bit on each cheek of the horse.
Yeah, yeah.
And there'd be another loop there that's missing. Last item I usually point out here is actually this thin bottle right here. If you read the label, it says Mrs. Winslow's Soothing Syrup.
It sure does.
Yeah. This was a tonic that was first marketed in 1849, sold until 1930, and it was advertised as a cure for teething babies. The primary components were morphine and alcohol.
Oh, well, there you go.
Some unknown thousands of babies died from using this product.
Oh my God.
To the point that it earned the nickname Baby Killer. And that bottle was found on this property. You assume it was here for the advertised purpose. Now, obviously all of Emma's children lived to adulthood, but I mentioned that Sophia had 11, and I established with the picture of her daughter that they definitely visited this property. 2 of Sophia's daughters died in infancy. Her second child, Reuben, was born in 1871, died the same year. Her 10th child, Herbert, was born in 1887, died 1889. And we knew about that before we found the bottle. Now we have it, and I wonder if that's not the unintentional murder weapon.
God, man, that's just usually creeps right there. God,
yeah. One more thing about this. It was disavowed by the American Medical Association in 1911, continued to be sold until 1930.
So there's probably more of them running around.
Oh yeah.
Probably, you know. So.
And so I've seen the newspaper ads from after 1911 where it is saying, give this to your baby. And 2 or 3 drops of the stuff would probably do the job of that hurting the baby,
yeah.
but they were advertising spoonfuls of the stuff.
Oh my God, yeah. No, that's enough to... Yeah.
And yeah, this stuff was all over the place. They took, in testimony in 1867, I think, the company said that they estimated about 1.5 million sales a year at that time.
Yeah, what about it? Adults probably drinking that stuff.
Yeah.
Who knows?
And this was...
There's a war going on.
This was in the United States and the United Kingdom, so this was everywhere.
All over, yeah. Wow.
That's about all I have, y'all.
Cool.
You have any questions?
Andrew, thank you so much, man. Thank you for everything. Wow, dude, I think I've learned more here in the past 30 minutes than, even stuff like this. Dude, I love history, man. Like I said, I'm not ghost hunting, but this is history, and with all the new developments and everything, and some of the stuff gets forgot about. I'm really, really impressed with your knowledge, man. Thank you so much. Hey, this is Sean again with the Gulf Coast and Beyond. I want to thank Andrew for giving me the tour and the history lesson, and that's pretty impressive, the knowledge he has, and to share it with me like that and give me the tour. I'm very grateful, and so hope you enjoyed it. Ghost hunt tomorrow night. We'll keep you posted.